Israel thrives today, despite the same hatred of Jews and vows of destruction it has faced since its inception in 1947. AP on November 29, 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. Most Zionists accepted the deal, while Arabs almost universally rejected it and declared war. One Muslim delegate, referring to Jews living in Arab nations, warned that the blood will flow like rivers in the Middle East. Iraq's prime minister threatened that the Jewish state would not survive, saying, "We will smash the country with our guns and obliterate every place the Jews seek shelter in," while Syria's leader claimed, "We shall eradicate Zionism." 70 years later, a lust for Jewish blood is a staple of Islamic State, Hezbollah and Hamas, whose charter calls for the elimination of Israel. Iran's leaders call Israel Little Satan and vow to wipe it off the map. In important ways, then, not much has changed. Jew hatred remains main enough to flourish in the sunshine as well as the shadows, including at major American university campuses and European parliaments. Year in, year out, Jews are the victims of most of the religious hate crimes in the United States. Some UN bodies exist to demonize Israel while ignoring wholesale slaughter and oppression in other lands. Indeed, if that partition proposal were submitted to a much larger General Assembly today, it probably would not get majority support, let alone the two-thirds approval it got in 1947. Yet in other ways, everything has changed. Israel, which declared independence in 1948, is a mighty regional power militarily, and its economy and technical innovations are world-renowned. This is exceptionalism, Israeli style. Politically, it's made progress, too. Peace treaties with Jordan and Egypt have proved remarkably durable, and other Arab states have established quiet working relationships with the nation they tried repeatedly to destroy. Paradoxically, the rise of Islamic terrorism has created common ground with some former enemies. Even Barack Obama's flawed nuclear deal with Iran, vehemently opposed by both Israel and Saudi Arabia, is bringing the two nations closer because they share a vision of Iran as an existential threat. A recent article in the Jerusalem Post described growing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia as perhaps the most significant shift in the region, and called a secret visit by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Israel in September evidence that official diplomatic relations are possible. Jared Kushner, President Trump's top Mideast advisor, also visited both countries in a bid to improve Israeli-Arab ties and help broker an Israeli-Palestinian deal. On that second point, pessimism remains the safe bet. Although Trump reversed Obama's tilt toward the Palestinians, neither president has had success in changing the essential dynamics: the violent refusal of Palestinian elements to accept Israel's right to exist. While much of the public debate is couched in terms of borders and settlements and sovereignty over Jerusalem, the larger truth is that Palestinians have pursued Israel's destruction with more zeal than they applied to building their own state. While you would never know it from most coverage in the American media, a two-state solution was offered to both Yasser Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas, but neither would say yes. To do so would have meant signing their own death warrants at the hands of fellow Arabs committed to Israel's destruction. The result is that many Palestinians remain scattered in refugee camps around the region established nearly 70 years ago, unwanted by their hosts while serving as political pawns. In their own self-governed territories, they are bitterly divided and impoverished, with much of the population living on international handouts and a fantasy that a Palestine without Jews is inevitable. At times, there have been brief interludes of hope that internal change was coming. Abbas, head of the Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, told an Israeli journalist that he believed the Arabs' 1947 rejection of the partition was a mistake that he hoped to correct. That was 6 years ago. Since then, Abbas, finishing the 13th year of a four-year term, has done little to turn that idea into reality. As I prepare for an upcoming trip to Israel and the West Bank, my third visit to the region, I expect to find an even more dynamic Jewish state, where even the constant threat of catastrophe does not interfere with a zest for life. Then again, that's Israel. A miracle among nations. NY hero on Kinky Boots. Kathleen Rice is of surprises these days. The Long Island representative always seemed to get along Democrat, but she's now playing the role of a courageous maverick breaking ranks with her party's ossified leadership. On Monday, she became the first Dem in Congress to call for Sen. Al Franken to step down following dual harassment allegations. Rice also criticized Nancy Pelosi after the minority leader said she trusted Rep. John Conyers to make his own decision after he, too, was charged with dual harassment claims. "People are seeing us circle the wagons and protect our own," she told a reporter, saying the practice of both parties is ridiculous. Good for Rice for putting principle ahead of party. Let's hope her example is contagious. Times hell-bent on Libya twist in a so-called straight news story on a trial over the Benghazi terror attacks. The New York Times claimed the attacks took on broader significance as Republicans and conservative news outlets sought to use them to damage the presidential ambitions of Hillary Clinton. Here's a more accurate version. The New York Times and other liberal media outlets downplayed the significance of the attacks in order to protect the presidential ambitions of Hillary Clinton. Hook, Lee and Stinker on second thought. Never mind. Even by New York standards, City Hall's quick flip-flop on the trouble with new ferry boats was striking. Only hours after a top 8 offered fresh denials of serious problems and insisted repairs on as many as 5 boats reflected standard practice and regular maintenance, a spokesman for Mayor de Blasio sang a very different tune. He suddenly announced that the mayor was ordering an independent investigation, saying de Blasio was unhappy with the ferry operators' lack of communication and is demanding they do better. We're sending in our own independent experts and inspectors to get to the bottom of this, Press Secretary Eric Phillips said. The probe should start at City Hall. As always, de Blasio's first response to the Post's reports of trouble was to deny and lie. Nothing to see here, his office insisted, move along. That was the strategy until the facts sunk it. As more trouble showed up in more boats, it wasn't just passengers who needed life jackets. So did the mayor's message. Of course, starting with the truth is always the best policy, but that would be novel for de Blasio. He offers it only when everything else has failed. And to think, 4 more years.